So, hey, first of all, thank you, Suhas, for joining us. For folks joining us, Suhas is in SF right now. It is his early morning, and he's been gracious enough to come and join us at the early morning. And thanks for everyone who's joined in. I know it's 8 p.m. in India, and it's early time there. So, thank you for on both the sides. A, Suhas for joining in early, and B, folks for coming online. For folks who don't know Suhas, you've been living under a rock. Suhas is the co-founder of the product, folks. He is one of. There was a recent tweet about him, I think by Soumya. Like why is Suhas Motwani famous in the startup world? And they were like, अगर cricket में विराट कोहली है तो startup में सुहास है,
That
right?
is too kind.
So yeah, I mean, but formally, Suhas, I would like to hand over the stage to you for a short intro about yourself.
Sure. Thanks so much, Sid, Shafiq, for doing this and everyone for joining in. I am not a morning person, so this is new for me. But I guess the jet lag makes me wake up earlier than usual. So I think, in fact, Sid mentioned I was half an hour early to this call. So that's a first. But yeah, quick intro. I think I've been in product for the last 6 years. On my last stint, very recently, was working with PepsiCo in Europe, building out internal products for them. On the side for the last 4 years, been really passionate about building community. One that grew really large is the product folks, and I think bunch of other smaller communities that we keep contributing to. I think the idea for me is to stick at the intersection of the two. I really like building communities. I think I'll continue doing that for the long term. And I love building products, so that is something I'll continue doing for the long term. And I hope I'll be able to exist in the intersection of these two. And I think we're seeing the world converge, right? You all come from the marketing and the growth world, especially post pandemic. Communities have existed forever, but post pandemic is where we're seeing a lot more focus, right? From something that was run on the sidelines to suddenly it's now, since 2021, I've seen them come to life, right? Of course, it's not easy to navigate. It is not a tap like imagine if you were running Facebook ads, right? For example, right? There, a week from then, you'd at least see some ROI, as they call it, come into your campaign. But communities take a much longer gestation period. So, do you have the patience to see it along? I think that is one key factor. But yeah, I think very exciting times from where we see it, from the lens that we see it. It is definitely something that a lot more people are taking seriously. So yeah.
Great. And I don't need to introduce Shafiq to all the folks here. Shafiq is one of those guys on the community that basically is known very well, and he basically in the S11S community. Suhas, if you had to look at a analogy, he's the Heimdall of S11S community.
Okay, wow.
Nothing gets past him. Nothing goes past him. Nobody types a word without him knowing what is being typed. He's that
Nice.
person.
Nice. That's always good. I think every community should have a Shafiq then, I guess.
Cool,
Nice.
yeah. So we'll jump right in, right? And I mean that's how we typically do. So how's the session? So we basically dive right into the topic. We discuss this for 30, 45 minutes and we pick on tangents and we basically it's a free flowing discussion. For folks who are joining in, I haven't shared any script with Suhas. And
Yeah,
Suhas can
okay.
confirm that I mean there is no script here shared. We are not going to go like with a structured manner. We're just going to go pick up each thread. Uh,
Yes.
and post that, we give around 10 to 15 minutes for any of the attendees to, come and ask us any
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely. And I
Yeah.
love to keep it pretty tactical. So feel free to, like bring in a case if you want to jam on something, feel free to candidly ask anything that you think might be going around in communities, but behind the scene might be completely different. Happy to share anything that you guys have been curious about, but haven't gotten a chance to ask yet.
Sure. Folks, you can use the chat channel for your questions and we can pick it up from there. Uh, cool. So, Suhas, starting off with the first question, right? And, I think how did you when you started the product, folks, right? And you talked about starting other multiple other communities and helping other communities. Specific to that, how did you start thinking about the product force as a community? Was there a vision that you had or a mission that you had, or was there something you were like, no, I needed to do this? What was the initial spark thought, and how did you then structure it into a thought process of a community?
Absolutely. To be very honest with you, I don't think we'd have expected it to become a community and one that is this large when we started. Idea was when we started, it was just bringing interesting people in the same room, right? Just that much. Right? If you think of it, and even for the longest time, I think for a year and a half, maybe 8 months before the pandemic, when we started in May of 2019, and I think February, March of 2020 is where I think we started seeing the world go into a lockdown. So I think even for a good 8-10 months period, we were just doing offline events, right? And for everyone back in the day, you know how hard it was to organize these offline events. It was not scalable. That is one
Yeah,
thing that I'd say for sure. So even pre-pandemic, we were just doing offline events, and communities is something that we were just learning, right? Okay, hota kya hai community, and so we were also very new to it. Honestly, there is no school for community today. I think there are lots of Twitter threads and blogs and playbooks, etc. But in 2019, at least not that we knew of, there probably were some guides online, but it's not something that you learn like, maybe coding you have a school for it, maybe accounting you have a school for it. You're taught all of that formally. There isn't a school for community yet. So and honestly, I think the communities have existed forever, so it's not like it's something completely new. It's just that something, not something that we had thought of, right? So I think over time, I think there are some interesting insights we got from the members who were joining our events. And in 2019, the product management world was not as crowded as it is today. There was still a lot of period, lot of white spaces which were open. Right? For example, even if someone wanted to break into product, for example, um, hardly any like courses out there back then. Right? Today, I think there are way too many. So the other end of the spectrum. But even for the one that were available, were pretty expensive. So these were paid courses. For product management as a field that was growing, I think people wanted an alternative to first understand what product is all about, right? So the events that we did, the teaching tracks or the learning tracks that we brought in were all geared towards that, and we were very happy sticking in that niche. Right? I think luckily we picked up a broader umbrella term called the product folks, so now it gives us a lot more experimenting, space to experiment. But for the longest term, we stuck just to product management and picked up some of these nuances back from the community. Right? Like every community has members sharing, I wish there's some like this existed, or they'll share with you, hey, can we do this the next time, right? Those kind of nuances. So that really helped us shaped up, okay, hey, what do we want to do next? So from events, then we moved up into a little bit on the education side. From the education, it came back and some of them sharing that, hey, this is great, but can you help us transition as well? So then the opportunities and the job side came through, and like that, I think we've started building initiatives. And today we have 19 initiatives running in parallel, um, and a bunch of vertical communities. So I think the journey has definitely been something that has evolved over time. It's not some, it's not something that we would have expected on day one for sure.
yeah. And then picking on this, right? You just talked about, how you took feedback from everyone and basically, everyone taking an initiative and saying that, okay, let's do this here, or listen, we should have wanted this, or we wanted this, and you build out those particular tangents, right? One of the things for, growing a community is the need for, having that sense of freedom and self-expression so that people
Exactly.
people can be themselves, right? And that's why the community exists, because then people can be themselves.
Correct.
But when you're scaling that community, right, and this is where it would have got interesting, how do you balance the need for your rules, guidelines, and
Yeah.
how do you make sure that, okay, listen, these are your playfield, but still you have a self-expression and freedom there? How do you
Correct.
manage? Because initially it's like a wild wild west, right? Everyone's contributing, everyone is on the same
Yeah. Yeah.
wavelength, but then you have different actors coming in at different periods of time.
Correct.
So how do you manage that phase of the community?
It's again a personal belief. I feel like for us, moderation has been something that's very key. Of course, um, the self-expression helps a lot of people then come back and contribute, right? They feel like, okay, product folks is a great experimentation pad, right? They can come execute something. They have an idea. They get a team together. They can share. They can get feedback. They can launch. They can do a lot of things. But that we balance it very, very well with some level of moderation, because we feel like, okay, hey, we cannot become something for everyone. We want to become something for everyone in the product space. All right. So I think that is the niche that we still want to stick around. And I feel like powerful communities are built with that sense of purpose, right? I think with S11S, I guess you'll have really built out in the growth and marketing space, right? That's a domain. But if someone comes and shares something around food photography, for example, right, it's not very relevant for this set of members. Of course, you can have a channel within the community, which is like a water cooler channel. We have a promo channel, we have a water cooler channel where people share that. But I think on a lot of other channels, we've tried to keep moderation pretty strict. Reason for that is I think then people really value, okay, then and then like the word of mouth really kicks. Okay, hey, these guys are serious about what they're doing. It's not just another WhatsApp group, or it's not just another Slack channel where people are just coming and sharing a bunch of things. So I think a balance between moderation as well as building a pad where people can come around experimentation, they feel comfortable coming and failing, right? Of course, they have a support of a much larger community, so it's a lot easier to build, to shape your ideas, to launch. But at the same time, if it fails, right, or if initiative doesn't kick off, there's hardly any downside, right? Like there's no one to say that, okay, hey, why does this not work out? There are no OKRs or KRAs that you need to meet. So I think that balance between the two is something that's really helping us shape up the community.
Yeah, I think this resonates a lot with what we did with S11S. So we basically build the community for marketing and growth professionals, especially working in the SaaS domain. But we did not put a limit to other people entering the community, like salespeople,
Nice.
SDR
Yeah.
people, people from HR domain or founders themselves, right? We did not want it to become like yet another echo chamber wherein all marketers and growth people just come and talk about the same thing over and over again. And that has essentially helped in a lot of user generated content that gets created. Some people asking question organically, other people, whoever has expertise in that domain, answering it, and that sort of creates like a loop in itself for people to come back to the community. So somebody who is trying to transition from, let's say, another domain to marketing or growth would come back to this community which they had discovered, let's say, 6 months back, just to ask those peculiar questions because they think that here experts in these domain hang out. uh,
Yeah.
and that also helps us have like diverse enough conversation but about the same thing.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's important. Like,
Yeah, so
do you
so
guys also have like a, sorry,
go
I was
ahead.
just asking, do you guys also have like a pro community or a members only community or like a more curated is it two layers or is it today just one
It's
layer?
a free for all community. We have not monetized it, at least from a user standpoint. The whole idea and the vision around having S11S was to give access to people who are just 1 2 years uh, in their work experience in SaaS, to give access to them to people who have had like 8 10 12 years of experience.
Nice.
And we did not want the burden to come to the users, and hence
Mm-hmm.
we rely on sponsorships here and there for doing events, doing some kind of other activities like promotional messages on the newsletters and stuff. uh,
Yeah.
so we've kept it free as of now.
Nice.
And I
Mm.
wanted to touch back upon how did monetization come to
Yeah.
product folks, and
Yeah.
how did you crack that beat, because that is something that we've not really taken into account as of now with S11S.
Yeah, no, completely resonate. Reason I was asking for that, I think, is also how we've been thinking about it, right? So I think from the early days, we've tried to keep two layers, and for everyone who's looking to build a community. Something that I learned much later was it's great if you have one layer of content or audience on top of it. For us, that essentially became this larger free community because people can come, then experiment, learn what your community is all about, and then you also create this layer on top. Of course, even we don't have a member only like a paid community, but even from the early days we had a community that was only for senior product folks, and that continues to exist today. So that's how we just tried differentiating the two, and that's why I'd asked that question. On the monetization front, I think again same like S1 and S. I think we don't charge the users at all. In fact, after 4 years, the first event where we charged the members was the unconference, right? So for 4 years, we've never charged, and I think we continue to have free events every month across 25 cities. That's a property we call GrabChai. all our live learning sessions. For example, every quarter we do a cohort-based course, and the most popular one or the most awaited one every year is called Insurger, which is our flagship product management one. Last year we had about 40,000 registrations for that, and that is again completely free. So resonate with exactly what you do. What we try doing on the other side is try to make it win-win-win, right? Community gets access, so it's a win for them. Brands who have product people as their ICP, we try bringing them on board because then they get visibility, they get some level of exposure to our community. And for us, yes, as enablers, I think that becomes the win from both sides, right? I think this is something that we figured a year and a half into the journey. We hadn't monetized at all, but then I think even as you guys realize, I think it becomes difficult to sustain as a community grows much larger. And for us, I think the next layer, what monetization will allow is also we're 100% volunteer driven today. But we feel like if you want to go from this today, we are about 160,000 strong on TPF and about 40,000 strong on TPH, cumulatively around 200,000 strong. We feel like can we, if we are able to gather enough resources, then maybe that will help us get someone on board full time, at least on the ops side. I think that is becoming super hard for us to manage. Um, it's great as it's going, but I think that will just allow us to go from here to the next level. I think monetization allows us one for sustainability
Yeah,
and second for growth. So that's how we look at monetizing, or what monetization enables us.
makes sense.
I hope that
Cool.
helps. I think, yeah. But even for us,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
on the similar.
Yeah, no. We have a similar vision. We have a similar line of thinking, at least. But yeah, we can exchange notes
Yeah.
later on.
Yeah, no,
What
100%.
do
In
you
fact, in fact, fun fact is before I started the Product Folks, I used to run or contribute to a community called Growth Folks. The idea of the Product Folks came from Growth Folks. Ideally, it started off as Product Folks, just whatever we were doing for Growth Folks there, but for product people. But it was already taken. So then I just added the. So in 30 seconds, we had the logo on Canva. We added the before this, bought the domain. We didn't think too much about the brand back then because we never thought it would become that big. Idea was okay, hey, just what we're doing for Growth Folks, and it was very tiny, right? This was in 2018, a year
yeah.
before it started, and I think about 500 members on a Facebook group. It was curated for people in growth and marketing. But yeah, and I just thought I'd share that because similar starting points.
I think Sid has a story to share around why S11S domain has dot club to it because that was the cheapest.
That's the only one that's available, right? Yeah, I think
That was the
similar
cheapest
story.
available. It was not the only one available. It was the cheapest available, and we were like,
Got it.
"Abhi, theek hai, abhi, let's go for
Go
this
ahead,
right
same,
now, and then we'll
same,
see."
same. Absolutely, absolutely, no, completely. And I think club makes it sound really nice as well. So S1 and S2 club is a nice,
Yeah,
nice one that you picked up.
yeah, and I, I mean, we got inspiration for a lot of people think that one stands for the A letter, like SAS, because we are into SAS as well. People think it stands for AA. It's the one. It's not that.
Uh-huh,
It's basically the SAS Saturdays that we used to have a rant session, which is, I mean, between the three, four of us, we used to have a rant session, call it SAS Saturdays.
uh-huh,
We just had 11 letters between the first letter and the last letter, like A16Z, right?
uh-huh.
So we were like, okay, if we had to do that, how much it will be? 11, right? It's coincidence that 11 also comes with like A. If you put the 1 1 to it, it also is the same, right?
Very interesting.
And that's why we chose S11S. And then later, some people told us, oh, you chose it because A is one, and we were like, oh, we never figured that out, but that could also be a part of our story when we pitch to
Yeah,
VCs tomorrow.
nice, nice. No, no, this is very interesting.
uh,
Yeah.
so cool, yeah. One of the other things, and we are talking about monetization. We've talked about how you scaled up the community. But for anyone looking to start up a community, like I mean, like you said, right, 2017, 18, 2016, those days communities, especially online communities, were a very low touch and feel, and mostly it was offline events, and online there was not so much of a feel of a community, right? Post the COVID era, people got comfortable with online, and people started engaging, and people started finding their tribe. But somebody looking in 2023, right? Somebody looking to think about community, what are the first principles thought that they should basically answer before they even think about, okay, this is a community for me, or this constitutes a community, like rather than, I mean, even before going to build, like how to build, how do they define whether it's a community or not? Because I think a lot of people have that problem. They tend to
Yeah.
think that, okay, there should be a community, but there is not a community.
Yeah.
So how people should think about it?
Yeah, I think two, three things here. One is definitely figure out the difference between an audience and community. Today, those lines are blurred. Sometimes you don't even need a community, right? If you are a brand who's thinking of building a community, if you're a founder who's thinking of building maybe a beta community, lots of different kinds of communities that you can think of. But I think even before putting this in, think of it that you will need a minimum of 12 months and lots of resources, both in terms of time and some amount of investment, right, to get this off the ground. It is not something that you can experiment for 3 6 months. You will not see any result and you'll be like, okay, hey, this is not working out, and you will close it down, right? So I think very important for you to start thinking of both these things. One, definitely the time and effort involved. Second, the difference between an audience and a community, and which one do you need at the stage that you are at, right? Sometimes you just do not have the bandwidth to run a community. Um, don't start one, right? Partner with some, figure out the need for this community. On the other side, on the flip side, it's never too early or never too late to start a community, right? These days, especially since 2019, I think the shift has been towards building very early stage beta communities, like lots of last SaaS founders today. In fact, I think there was a survey that I was reading, I think in 2021, they had done a survey with about 1,200 SaaS founders. Just a year ago, the number of those SaaS founders thinking of building a community was closer to 18%. And in a year, that had jumped up to 84%, right? So there's a lot more focus to building out community. And I'll share that article with you guys also. I think I had seen it when Thredo announced their uh,
Ah,
funding announcement. So they had some
yeah.
statistics now where what is the survey when I didn't go deeper. But then we've all seen the buzz around it. You have some numbers to back it up. So communities are here to stay. It's just that you need to figure out, okay, hey, what can I use it for? Right. And every set of it today, you come from the marketing world, you know how important it is to have like this core set of believers, right? People who organically come talk about your product, they come interact with your marketing post, like lots of stuff that is needed in the early days. Um, so you can have a community of ambassadors, right? Sephora did this really well. So I think the spectrum is large. Early stage beta communities to late stage billion-dollar companies solving it for marketing needs. Airbnb is a great example, right? Their entire supply side community. If you check out withcommunity.airbnb.com, you and me as consumers don't see it, but there are a million suppliers there. And for anyone solving a marketplace problem, you know how hard it is to crack supply, right? So even billion-dollar companies. So I'm just giving you both ends of the
Yeah.
spectrum, right? It is not just
Yeah.
something that is new or shiny object for a bunch of YC founders. No, it is across the entire spectrum, right from early stage startups to billion-dollar company, using it for different specific actions. I think these are two, three things that you need to keep in mind while you're starting community. The why has to be really important, and second, you get in a buy-in at least for a year, right? Without that, it is going to be super hard. And last one is like try being as small as possible for the longest time. We often just I love drawing analogies between a community to a product to a startup, right? 80-90% of all the thesis around building any of these three is the same, right? Like in a product also, they ask, keep it narrow, keep it niche, solve it for a core set of people, and then grow that up,
Then
right? I think
expand to the then expand your ICP.
exactly the same, right? Like so for communities as well. Oftentimes, at least the people who come talk to us at the product folks, early stage community builders, they compare a day zero to day 30. Even we do that, right? Even we sometimes think, okay, hey, we compare it to usually you're always comparing up, but at the same time, I think it's important for you to remember that it's the other way around. Like if you ask me, I love building tiny communities, right? So, as a community builder, like enjoy that gestation period, that first 12 months, because that sets the foundation, right? If you can even get 100 people who really love being there, I think that should be the focus rather than, okay, hey, how do I grow to 10,000 members really soon? So I think that differentiation, of course, what we started thinking about much later is how do we build the content and a little bit of the like content and community. I feel today needs to go hand in hand. So I think we thought of content a lot later. If you guys are starting to think about it from day one, I think try thinking of both the layers, because one will feed into the other. From the community, again, you'll get UGC, can go back, and so it's a loop. I think we discovered that much later, but I think today, I think we're trying to get that loop in place, and we're at least there, I think, to a certain certain. I think we're very happy with the way we've been able to scale up at least. Of course, lots of room for improvement, just like every other community. But I think we've been at least been able to put together one part of this loop for us.
Cool. And Suhas, now I'll just jump into a little bit more, little personal in angle into the product, folks.
Yeah.
And tell us some key inflection moments where you felt this community is going to die. Like, okay, अब इसको बंद करना, like, I have to shut it down. And you felt, oh, this community is now going to go like 50x. अभी तो इसको कोई रोकने नहीं वाला है. What were those moments?
I think both, to be honest, the one in the early days, you feel a lot more about the shutting down. I think in the period between 16 or 6 to 15 months, I think that's where you see a lot of flow. If I were to look back, I think offline events are very, very hard to pull off. Like we were doing offline events across 8, 9 cities before the pandemic every month, right? If you ask me, would I be able to pull that off today? Maybe not. I think there was some amount of raw energy that pushed us into doing that every month, month on month. Um, it is a lot of effort, right? So huge kudos to maybe communities like the Startup Grind or Mind the Product and a bunch of them who do. And these are not brand communities. I know Google Developer Circle. I know Facebook, का जो, the dev circles that used to be there. They used to do a lot of it, but those are brand communities. Come on, like you have billions of dollars, you have such big resources where they're pushing events across multiple cities. But for I think other communities who've been doing offline events, I think huge respect for them, right? So for me, I think those initial days there were a lot of okay, hey, am I spending time the right way? Because even like every other community builder, at 0 to 12 months period, you don't see traction, right? So many times you're like, okay, um, Touchwood Bangalore was kind to me. We used to always see people come at the events, but I know like our city leads from smaller cities, they used to maybe get like they used to see the Bangalore photos where there'll be 50, 100 people, but at the same time there'll be like 12 people in that. So it is not a motivating
Yeah.
sign, right? Like you have 100 people sign up, 10, 12 people will come and happens. I think every community builder goes through that journey. So there are a bunch of these instances. Even in the pandemic, of course, looking back, I think that was a huge, huge boost to us. But getting into the pandemic, we were an offline only community, right? We didn't have an online component at all. That transition period was a question mark, right? Hey, what are we going to do? Like offline events are not there anymore. We were just getting started with the education. Luckily, I think the city leads were able to come together, form the core team, figure out, okay, hey, what do we want to do for 3, 6 months? So that way, I think things in the retro really worked out, and that probably brings it to the other inflection point. I think the pandemic was definitely an inflection point for us. Unlocking the online component was critical. I don't think we'd have grown this fast and this much word of mouth if not for the online components of our community. And somewhere I think the loop also has become very interesting for us now, right? Most of the Gyan sessions, the learning sessions, we keep it online. Most of the networking bits we keep it offline, and we try creating a frequency or a cadence to this, right? So for example, in the online one, we have weekly AMAs, monthly teardowns, quarterly CBCs. On the offline ones, monthly meetups, quarterly curated meetups, and a yearly conference or an unconference like the one we did. I think that ritual really helps us. On the 50x, I think definitely pandemic saw some uptick for us. Slowly but surely, I think we'd have never expected early days, I think we had hosted Shreyas Doshi. We saw 2,000 people tune in live to that. We had to borrow someone else's Zoom account, right? That was never before for us. So, you're like, okay, there is something in this. From there to 40,000 registrations on the last Insurger, I think that was definitely one of the scaled moments for us. And like I've chatted with boot camps who haven't had like people who've raised money who haven't had this kind of traction. So for us, that really, really helped us, right? So the way we started thinking about democratizing, education, product education at scale, helping people build products from that side of the globe to the other side. It just gave us a lot more confidence in what we were doing, right? Monetization kicked in a lot later, right? A year and a half, 2 years into the community. So we just started thinking about sustaining. So initial days it was just chai samosa, so we used to figure out how to sustain the community, but then the cost kept adding up. So I think post that, one of the inflection points was definitely the pandemic. Second, I think now what I really, really like is, um, there are so many parts of the community where I'm personally, or the core team is not personally involved or like directly involved, right? I think that's the ideal state in any community or a community builder's life cycle, that you want the community to come to a stage where it's not dependent on you, right? People think that's from day one, but I'll be very like that's probably one of the myths that a community can run on its own. Like, Sid, Shafiq, you all can also probably resonate that there is some amount of effort that's involved from
Yeah,
like the team behind that.
yeah,
But all of us dream about the day where everyone's contributing, everyone's learning, and it's a super engaged community, right?
yeah.
I think we at least I'm happy about that. I think inflection from that also is very important because that gives you a line of sustainability, right? You start thinking about, okay, hey, if I step out or say life takes over, the community will continue to run. I think
Sure.
these are two things that I really look at from an inflection point of view, one external and one internal.
Got it. I think there is one question related to what you just said, right? Siddharth Katpalia has asked how many people handle these 19 initiatives that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, apart from city chapter leads, I think we have about 25 volunteers, active volunteers today, maybe more than 100 who contributed over our 4-year lifetime, but 25 on TPF and about six on TPH. So totally, I think about 30, 31 volunteers. And these are apart from the ones who manage our cities. So we have 25 cities that we're live in today, um, largely in Asia, but we've also kicked off SF, New York, Dallas/Austin. Later this year, we want to do Singapore, London, Berlin, and Dubai. I think it's four more cities coming up. By the end of the year, we should be live in about 30 cities. Idea is just to keep 30 live, engaged community. So, you could consider 30 city chapter leads there and a team of 30 who's managing these 19 different initiatives.
Interesting. uh, in terms of like what do these volunteers get? Is it
Yeah.
like do they get any benefit out of it, or do they do it on pro bono basis just because they are inclined and have the intent to do and contribute towards the community?
I think it works out both ways. I think they definitely give a lot to the community, but depends on the stage of the volunteer, right? If it's someone who's early in their career, I think a lot of interesting ways. The largest, I think, benefit for them is just getting an opportunity in the product space. I think today, 4 years later, I think there are numerous examples where people have transitioned into it. Our volunteers have gotten into great companies. Um, but this was not the case 4 years ago, right? So that couldn't have been a pitch. It could have been a vision, but today there are enough examples, right? So I think for early stage volunteers, I think that is the largest motivation. Contribute, um, get in places where others probably don't have access to. And I don't think any amount of money will probably, this probably gives you uh, a head start, right? What is the other alternative? You probably might have to go to B school, or you might have to attend different courses, you might have to, and still probably not get these opportunities, right? Today, I think the world is a different place. Everyone wants to get into product, and opportunities are still not as many. So that way, I think for early stage volunteers, it's a very different ballgame. For later stage volunteers, that's my understanding. And this is a question that I've been asked way too many times. So every time it comes up, I go back to my volunteers and ask, okay, hey, what's so now I have probably a little more like a informed view about it. For later stage volunteers, it's also um, I think one of the major things is networking. How do they meet more senior folks in a direct line of access? And second is if you think about it, post college life, apart from work, where else can you really make friends, right? So for them, it is about just hanging around with interesting set of people with a similar or a common vision. And for even more senior volunteers, I think there the give back component comes out a lot more. The pro bono bit that you mentioned, I think that comes in much later, not really at the early stage. The early stage, I think a volunteer is also figuring out, okay, hey, and it's more what's in it for me initial day than it is on the later stage. Later stage, it is more about, okay, hey, I worked for a decade, I have some knowledge to share, I want to help people. So the
Sure.
helping component needs to be there for all volunteers, but I think the stage of the volunteer also matters a lot more in terms of what they will take back from the community. And if there is enough that they can give and take back, I think those are the volunteers that stick around with us for the longest time. In fact, core team is all of them who had joined us in the early days, right? 3, 4 years back. That time they were probably leading a city, and now they're leading a bunch of initiatives. But the core team has still been the same.
Got it, got it. And what if the like what what the future entails for the product folks? Like how are you envisioning the next couple of years for product folks from here on to, let's say, 2025?
I did a slide on exactly this in the unconference, so I have a more clear answer for you. I think too tactical. Of course, the vision and the mission is now a lot more larger than it was when we started. But keeping it very tactical, two things. We want to go global. I think one thing we realized is we've done a lot from the grassroots level on the Asian side of things, but now I think there's an opportunity to build a bridge. Um, Whether it is about replicating TPF in other parts of the geography, or it is about just creating some community, some early stage community there where people from our community can really get exposure. So I think going global is one of those things. And second is vertical communities. Today, TPF is an umbrella community where we have a thriving women in product, sub chapter, I'd say, or I'd call that as a community by itself. That is probably under the umbrella, but everything that they do is on their own, right? We just support from the outside. I also don't have access to that community, right? So I think we just support as much as we can, but I think they've taken a great lead on this. So women in product becomes one. We've launched something called the Founder Folks, which is essentially for research builders within our community. How can we help them? We've launched something called the FinTech Folks. So these are three experiments of vertical community. We feel like they are helping us build more engagement and deeper conversation and specific help for that set of the community. So each of these is an experiment on building out these verticals. That goes great. For us, Product House really kicked off last year. So that was what gave us Product House on one side and Women in Product. These have existed for over a year now, and that really brought the belief into building these vertical communities. So tactically, these are two things that we'd love to achieve over the next 2 years: vertical communities and going global. Um, as a vision, I think now the eyes are now the eyes are also set on, hey, we're today Asia's largest volunteer-led product and tech community. Can we scale this more again into the global tactical theme? Can this now really be one of the largest globally? I think by 2025 we should have. We definitely have a line of sight, but how close can we get? I think that we'll have a clear answer 2 years from now.
Sure.
Sure. Cool. We'll take one question from Ronit. Uh, he's asked, if I want to learn community management, which creator should I follow on YouTube, or any course or any books that I can read? And this comes back to your initial when you started the discussion today, and you talked about, in 2016, 17, there were hardly anything on community. Everything was just being built, as you basically, I mean, it was like a product being built, right? You just put the nuts and bolts of the aeroplane as you started flying it. So,
Correct.
but what about 2023? Is there anyone that I mean, obviously, Ronit? I mean, if you're not following Suhas, please follow Suhas. Please attend all
Yeah.
his sessions and all his talks. Apart from that,
No, I don't think I've done too much around community to be honest. But I think first start thinking about, rather than following a creator, um, start thinking about why you want to get involved in community management. Like I said, I think all of y'all have already been building some form of community, either been building or contributing to some form of community since childhood, right? Like if you think of societies, if you think of, you know, different like college clubs you would have contributed to. Some of you might be part of Rotary, like somewhere you've been involved, right? Now it is just about how passionate you are. Like, is this something? Some people are naturally more inclined to it, some people aren't so inclined to it. So if you find that natural fit, then I'd say, okay, go deeper into building community. And if you want resources per se, I think if you're a beginner, check out The Art of Community. I think these are three books that I'm suggesting. If you're a beginner, then check out The Art of Community. If you've been there, done that for a bit, I think one that I really like is the Indispensable Community Building Playbook, right? It's essentially that helps you build successful online community. I'll share it in the chat section. Maybe you can pick it up, or I'll share a list with Sid if you can, like share that with the rest later. And if you guys have been building communities for some time, I think one thing that I had come across and I had started reading, haven't completed yet, but it's something called the Happy City, right? And I think eventually something that I want communities, like at least my belief as well, and something that this book tactically helps you learn is if you were to design a city from ground up today, what would that look like, right? And some part of that will help you design your own community in a smaller version. Um, and I think that's a very nice way to think about it, right? Like you close your eyes, think about what the world around you could look like, right? And if you were building a community for, say, growth and marketers, close your eyes. What is that? And imagine if you just have a really nice, warm and fuzzy feeling. What are the elements around you, right? You might want to have the 100 best growth and marketers around the world around you. You're stuck on an island with them. How do you design life around that, right? And if that is the feeling that you can bring in an online offline transient world, I think those are some of the best communities that I've seen come across. And keep experimenting. The idea is, see, there is no playbook that can tell you all of it. Tactically, maybe it will tell you, okay, how to get started, some interesting stuff, but just observe everything that's happening around you. Even for us, I think now what we're trying to do, observe what are the best practices. See, every good community out there will have some great elements, right? If you can pick the great elements from multiple such communities and build it in your own version, you build out something that's fantastic. So I think, unlike a lot more harder professions, I think here it is more about observing what's going around you, observing one from the external when you apply it, then observing from the internal side also. Is your community resonating with this? Are they liking it? If they're liking it, double down. If not, close, move on to the next one. Right. So from an initiative point of view, from a vibe point of view, observe externally, try implementing it, experiment as much as possible, and then that cycle comes back. Right. So I think experiment a lot more, give yourself that freedom to fail, and some that work, then double down and build a process around that. That's just a one line way to do it, but some of the books that I shared earlier might go deeper into this.
Cool. Uh, Quick question, and this is again from the folks who have joined in. I'm not able to see. Shafiq, can you see something wrong with my computer? Wait, I got it. I got it. I got it. Yeah, okay. Siddharth Katpalia has asked this question, and this is related to, I think, the discussion you said about, folks getting a good job placement, after doing, being volunteer and pro bono. So does the TPF claim, and this is very tactical, does the TPF claim job placement as a promise, said or unsaid?
Yeah, we don't promise. I think it's a byproduct of something that comes through. Neither to our members do we promise, nor to our volunteers. I think for volunteers especially, I think it's more about give, give, give first and then take. So come in with that mindset. But like that today, there are lots of examples, right? I think um, companies like, in fact, at some point of time, there were 6 product people in FAMPay, and this is like Brijesh only told me who heads the product there. 4 out of 6 were from TPF, right? One of them was a volunteer, 3 of them were members. Chargeby, for example, 2 of them were volunteering with our community. And I'm just sharing, since it's that tactical, I'm sharing examples that are coming to the top of my mind. These were all folks who joined us early, right? Backgrounds were, one of them was in customer success. One of them had been in IT for 5, 6 years with an MNC, like a IT services firm. For them to transition into product was not in a traditional sense, right? Like usually in 2020, I think the people who got into product more easily were the ones who were doing it at B school or internal transition. Um, or then you had seen some of the boot camps spring up, but boot camps traditionally haven't had as much success, right? These were 3 ways to product. Um, and the first 2 were not applicable here. Third would be them spending maybe 2 lakhs on a code and still not sure about, hey, we're going to get
Yeah.
in, right? So this alternative to getting into product for them was very interesting, but they didn't come here with that mindset, right? The reason I say that we don't promise is if you come in with the mindset that, okay, hey, I'm going to get a job out of this, then it becomes very transactional, and that's not the relationship we want within our community. So the promise to volunteers is, you might not contribute for 3 years, you might be here only for 3 months, life takes over, right? But in the 3 months that you're here, even if you don't do anything, at least ensure that you make 2 friends if you're, quitting, like, maybe there are times, when your job comes first, your family comes first, something might come, and maybe everyone's very excited about contributing, but the reality hits you,
Yes.
a couple of weeks or months into it. So that is okay, right? That is something that we are completely, over time, we've been able to make peace with that fact. But like the core thing is, like, we have town halls every month, internal town halls. So this is the thing that I think I've repeated the most, that it's completely okay if you don't contribute after 3 6 months. That is understandable. But if you haven't been able to make friends while you were here, I think that is something that we'd be sad about. So if you ask me, hey, what is it that you pitch to them? I think this is the one line. Come make friends. If they enjoy being here, I think, and they help others, I think we are more than happy to help them with intros. And today, I think we are in a lot more confident position to say that, okay, hey, we can at least make 3 intros for you, right? End of the day, cracking the job is still their skill set, but at least we can make life a little easier. So if you are helping, a community this large, we are here to help you. I think that is definitely something that we are a lot more confident today than we were when we started off.
Got it. And I'll just come back to one question. Uh, the initial set of users who are there who has joined you because of a particular mission, vision, right? How do you keep it? How do you keep them how do you give them value? Because in the early days it would have been very different, and now it has going to be very different, right? And this is asked by Vijay. So the exact question is, how do you build value for folks who had joined early days in the community and have literally outgrown themselves, right?
Yeah.
uh,
I think it's very important. So for us, what we are also like, and this is the exact problem statement which prompted us to go up the stack, right? So for a lot of people who are already transitioned into product, now it is important for us to cohortize our entire community and ensure there's enough value for people early stage, mid stage, late stage, even within the community, right? And this was the exact same problem statement that prompted us to do this. For example, the conference, the unconference, we had about 4,500 registration, and we curated that down to about 200 to 50 folks, right? So that really enabled us to gather senior most people, and for people, for example, who had joined us in the early days, for them maybe our cohorts, our online cohorts aren't as valuable today, because 4 years into, or 6 years into them being in the product space, this kind of a cohort might not be as interesting, but an unconference would be still very, very interesting. So for us, it is about, hey, how do we build enough number of initiatives for every layer? And I think slowly we're moving up that stack. I feel like at the grassroots level, we have lots of foundations in place. But today, for someone looking to transition into product, we have our flagship. We have the academy, followed up with the mentorship. So we have academy. On top of that, we have Ally, which is our mentorship platform. Post which we have the job portal. Like, so that pyramid is great for people looking to transition. But now, hey, what can we do for mid senior? Right. So for them, stuff like unconference, stuff like the curated meetups that we do. We're launching a member only portal, so bunch of stuff that'll exist only for them. So cohortizing your community is something that we are going towards, and that's why one of the, like, only out of, for the next 2 years, we're going to do only two things. And the second one was, hey, creating these vertical communities, or creating these more curated spaces where they can go deeper in their engagement. I think these are things that we're trying to do for those early members. And in fact, in the conference, I met some folks, bunch of them who had seen us from our first event, right? And those stories were very nostalgic for us as well. I think 6 of them took a photo together who were there in our second event, and they posted it on LinkedIn, right? They were like, dude, we never expected this to come along. One of them was a speaker at that event, right? He's probably 17 years into product, and he's like, dude, like, and he's the most involved today. Like, if I have to reach out, or sometimes you just need SMEs, maybe with a partner, maybe in an initiative you're
yeah.
doing. He's one of the first guys I go to, and it's always a yes, right? Because he's seen us grow from day zero. And there are very few believers, trust me on this, whether you're building a product, startup, or a community, there are very few people who stick along this long, right? I usually do a deck, right? I don't have it with me right now, but maybe one second, if I can just show that to you, since it's all
Yeah, yeah.
like, it's an Indian reference to Gully Boy, so you
Ah.
guys will definitely get it. Let me just check if I, yes, I have it. Just give me a second, I'll share my screen. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Not yet. Uh, yes, now I can see.
Uh,
Oh,
it's an Indian reference, so I don't use it as much. But the idea, I think, see, early days was there was a lot of raw energy, right? So it was like, okay, hey, we were very interested to do this, and personally, also, I think I enjoyed meeting people. I wasn't always like that. I think back in school and college, I was like I did have like a stage fright, right? I wouldn't go up, but I think this really helped me break that in smaller groups. Right? We've also grown from 50 member events to much larger ones today. I think personally that has been nice. I've got to meet so many people, and the friendship point is not just for volunteers; it's for me as well, right? Some of my closest friends today in the community are people that I've met via TPF, worked with at TPF, and it's just you spend so much time with them, you resonate with them, so you choose them as your friends, right? So, but early days were like this, lots of raw energy. I remember our offline events, right? The first time we did it, neither TPF nor us had any following per se, right? So it was us going outbound. Even for everyone who signed up, we used to like try reaching out. We should confirm with them that hey, you'll be there at the event, right? So it was more like okay, मेरी कसम that you'll come. But on the day of the event, right? You know how offline events are, especially it's again that demand
yeah.
supply and Bangalore traffic, right? So it was like, okay, hey, first event we go. If it's supposed to start, I don't remember exactly, but if it was to start at 4 p.m., there's hardly anyone in the room, right? So it was us like trying to call people and check, okay, hey, where exactly are you, right? And then I think luckily people were on the way, and we had a smaller venue, so even by the end of the day, it looked very packed. But those are the early days. I think definitely, definitely lots of patience along the way, right? Um, Today, the online component makes it look like a lot easier. That hey, you can spin up a WhatsApp group overnight, and people have a lot more LinkedIn following. But
Yeah.
say, Javik, back in the day, you'll know like it wasn't that popular. Like content creation, at least not that I remember. There it probably was something, but not that I remember was a thing like this, right?
Yeah.
Um, so slowly, I think idea was okay. Hey, just have that patience. Today I see like today it's a lot easier to start communities, but a lot harder to keep them engaged slash retained. Right? For us, I think looking back, we grew a lot slower in the early days. A lot more of the patience again, but at the same time, I think maybe that foundation was great for us, right? Because when you meet people offline month over month, you tend to stay in the loop or stay the bond becomes a lot more stronger, um, and that's why I think some of those early members stick around. I think in a purely online community that won't be as easy. And today I think why I remembered this also was the point that I shared earlier. Early days, I think you'll always see two sets of people, right? Very few on this side of the bucket where they're like, okay, just go do it, stay there. I wish people told me this in the early days, but for people building communities today, stick in the game for 8-12 months, right? You will lose hope 3 months into it. You will not see too much traction 6 months into it. But if you're there for 8-12 months, that's where I think some power of compounding kicks in. You'll start seeing some results, right? So if you can get through the 12-month mark, I think you'll start seeing the power of a community. But I feel like 90% of communities wither away in that first period because it's not easy, right? We all are in a day and age of very fast feedback cycles, right? We want to see things happen
Yeah,
tomorrow. And unfortunately, I think in communities that doesn't happen. So
not tomorrow,
very few
but
people,
10 minutes.
yeah, exactly. Right,
Delivered in
exactly.
10 minutes or less.
10 minutes. Exactly. Exactly. So I think very few in this bucket. If you find people here, please hold them to you. On all your bad days, I think these are the people who you'll go back to, and you'll see a lot more like this as well, right? I think we were a community that had zero name. Today, I think a lot more people know what TPF is, but I think back in the day, it didn't even make sense to a lot more people. Why are you doing this? And like getting a conversation also, to be honest, was very hard. Me and the other people who started this aren't from tier one backgrounds. None, I think almost none of the core team members have done like a MBA. But touchwood, I think all of them are doing great right now, right? One of them is a senior PM with Klarna, for example. Another one built out the product team at Eruditus, another one was early YC company. I mean, he was the third employee. So some of these guys back in the day was it wasn't as I'd say
Yeah,
maybe I got lucky finding them, but none of them used to get like they didn't have a network that they'll be like, okay, hey, you come, chat with us. In an offline event, you probably want one anchor there.
yeah.
So I still have LinkedIn conversation with so many people I would have reached out to cold. Where 4 years back I didn't get a response, but now things are a little different, right? So I think no
Now it
blame
is
or
the other way
anything there, but
around.
that,
Now the other way
that
around. People are cold
that's
mailing
good.
you.
That's good. That's good. That's good, right? But I'm just saying, like that time you feel like rejection is not easy, right? You
Yeah,
and that also puts you down. So like, okay, hey, if I'm not getting a response, they leave you unseen. And it's a numbers game. We used to reach out to so many people, and the funnel, if you reach out to 10 people,
funnel.
maybe one person responds, right? It gets better over time. So I'm just sharing very openly that all of us have gone through this cycle. So don't worry about it. Even if you're in that bucket, it just take some time. Give it again that 12 months, right? Initially, I just tell anyone. And this is not just for communities, right? There's a statistics on podcasting, for example. If you just do
Yeah,
22 episodes, you're
yeah. I think
already in the top,
10%.
yeah,
Yeah, the top
yeah,
10
top
percentile
5%,
on
in
the
fact, now.
top
Yeah,
5 percentile now.
5%.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah, so
podcast loops lose their steam after before 22 episodes itself.
correct, correct, right. And same thing for newsletters as well. You would have seen, I think, how many of us have tried writing newsletters, haven't. So all of them are like that. I think you need some amount of consistency, some amount of, your vibe, your flavor, which makes you unique, and then give it some time, right? Some grow a lot faster, some don't grow so fast. So, for the ones that are growing a lot faster, sometimes you will see them and you'll be like, okay, hey, you get demotivated seeing others, but then just stick in your lane for 12 months, right? And you start seeing some. I'm trying to quantify this number 12 months over and over and over again, but I don't want you to drop off, right? Once you do that 12 months, you will see some amount of results, right? And that will be good enough firepower for you to continue. But once you start seeing, then feedback cycles in communities are a lot longer, right? So I just gave you two
Yeah,
more examples. Ask anyone who's writing a newsletter, ask anyone who's starting a YouTube channel, ask anyone who is building, any other property, right? Even content property. Of course, in the day of TikTok and Reels, it seems like you can go viral overnight, but those are just outliers, right? You cannot build a playbook on an outlier theory, right? And even if they want to become really successful, one or two viral videos will not take them anywhere. Yes, the algo will give them preference, but they still have to put hours and hours into creating great content, right? So across the board, right? Whether you're building an audience, whether you're building a community, this is probably something that you'll see. Today, I think, like I said, I think we're having a lot more fun, right? It doesn't seem like back to back in a month, we pulled out a hackathon and a conference, entirely volunteer driven. The hackathon, in fact, we had some amazing partners. We had about 180, 200 people come through. 3 weeks later, we had a conference with, totally maybe about 400 people, right? So back to back in a month, pulling that off with everyone having their day job is not something that, I could have planned for, or I would have even looking back, right? Now I'm like, okay, dude, how did we even do this? And so we're just having fun, I think, and there is some sense of responsibility today, right? I think from a community point of view, from a community of product people point of view, I think lots of things that we do really try shaping up, or the impact is there, right? When for example 40,000 people are registering to your cohort based course, or like 4,500 people are registering to attend an offline event, I think it is for us to now step up, raise the bar every single time we do something. And as long as we continue doing that on one side and providing value on the other, I think we'll figure out a middle ground to survive. And I think that is where we are at today.
cool. So, I think so, folks. I mean, talking. I think we've come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, Suhas, for taking out time early in the morning. And I mean, like you said, you typically don't do early morning sessions. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for taking the time out. It's been awesome to host you. And folks who have stayed up in India late at night on a Friday night, I know it's difficult. Friday night, 8 p.m. Thank you so much for being here. For folks who have asked this question whether this recording will be available, yes, this recording will be available. We'll edit it, share it with Suhas first, and then we'll put it up YouTube. And then we'll get it to you folks.
Done deal. Thank you so much for joining in, folks, and Sid Shafiq, amazing community that you all are building. All the best, and if there's anything that we can help, happy to, come jam And yeah, all the best. I think much needed community like S11S is much needed. More power to you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right, folks.
It was nice jamming with you.
Likewise. Take care,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
See you.
Take care.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.